Welcome to Out of the Blank.
Welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank podcast with Joerg. Joerg, for every interesting listener, please let them know a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. My name is Joerg Arnu. I've been looking into the secrets of Area 51 since the late 1990s. I became interested in Area 51 really when I was still living back home in Germany many years ago. Area 51, UFOs, this big mystery. And when I moved to the United States, Area 51, of course, was a lot closer. And I just had to come here and see it for myself. There was just all this mystery around it, and there was no credible, real information about Area 51. There was UFO stories, there were these stories about reverse engineering alien technology, and I just had to see it for myself. So back in the late 1990s, I literally came up here to Rachel for a day trip to see what Area 51 is all about. And it really exceeded my wildest expectations in terms of mystery and strangeness of the environment. You're driving down this long dirt road in the middle of nowhere, driving towards the gates of Area 51. Off in the distance on one side, you see a radio facility on the side of a mountain, actually on top of a mountain, which, as I later learned, is also a surveillance facility for the land surrounding Area 51. So you're driving down this dirt road and you get to the perimeter of Area 51. There's no, at least at the time back then, there was no gate, there was no fence. All there were warning signs that says, back then it even said you can get shot if you cross the perimeter of Area 51. And you got security guys in a Jeep back then on the side of a hill watching you. So you're standing there in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the desert, no cell phone coverage, no civilization anywhere near you. And you're standing there facing the security guys and the unknown right around the corner of the road, literally. From there, my research really went on. I had some time on my hands between jobs, so I spent a lot of time in the area back in the 1990s and explored the area, got to know the security procedures and got to know a little bit about the projects of Area 51. And the more I learned about the projects at Area 51, and the more I really realized that it's all very classified military technology that is kept safe for the purpose of keeping our country safe. We need to keep this technology that is being developed at Area 51 out of the hands of the enemy. If the American public knows about all the good stuff that they are working on at Area 51, then obviously also the Russians will know about it. So that's the reason for the security and for the secrecy around Area 51.
I get this. Oh, I get the secrets, but damn it if I don't want to know what the hell they're doing in there. I mean, when people skepticize, and this is where I believe in Area 51. Obviously, it's real. We've seen it now, but before, for the longest time, it was folklore. It was magic, and then you would see an occasional video of a bunch of kids going down a path and some government Humvees coming up and people chasing after them, like, "Hey, stop recording! What are you doing?" And people don't know what those are. I never knew what those are. You could relate them to Area 51, sure, but there's been accounts in government documents about a secret facility at Area 51, and there are tied with some UAP documents, but I don't look at that as more credible. I look at Area 51 as credible, a base with secret information and secret tech. I mean, I can speculate what's in there, but when I heard Bob Lazar's story, much like we were talking off air, I mean, a lot of people in the UFO community do not go by that. But I go, propulsion systems. We have tech now where people see it and they go, holy shit, what? Like there was a robot that they created and at MIT. They never showed the process of that thing being built, but it's lifelike and it looks human. And I go, yeah, you only see the end phase when it's done or when they choose to show it to you. It's much like what they probably work at one of these government bases. They got stuff that's 20, 30 years advanced compared to what we have.
Exactly. That's exactly right. At least 30 years advanced of what we think is state of the art. There's a really good example for what you just said. There was a secret project at Area 51 in the 90s that was, or back in the, I think, 80s even, that was declassified all of a sudden. Nobody knew it existed. The name of the project is Tacit Blue. It was this weird looking elongated fuselage with some stubby wings to it. Nobody knew it existed. Nobody knew it flew out of Area 51. And all of a sudden they put it in a museum and said, yeah, well, we've had this for a while. We played with this for a while. You didn't know? No, we didn't. It was done in secrecy. But that's how things work. They have this down so well that even myself and our group, we have a very hard time even getting a glimpse of what's going on at Area 51. And then all of a sudden it's out in the open. It's like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. Like right now they're playing with B-21 bomber. There's two projects really that are going on at Area 51 right now. There's the B-21 that is being developed mostly at Plant 42, but it is also subsystems of the B-21. We don't know if the entire plane is flying yet, but subsystems are already functional. They are being tested in the ranges around Area 51. Area 51 is really the driving force behind these tests. So we got the B-21 bomber by Northrop, of course, and then we got it is described as a family of systems. It's called the Next Generation Air Dominance Project. What that is, the central part of it is a fighter jet that is being developed most likely by Lockheed. We don't know that for a fact, but very likely Lockheed is the company developing this. And then around this manned fighter jet, there's a whole family of systems, of drones that fly information with it, that are controlled by AI and by this fighter jet. It's almost like the cloaking, or I'm sorry, it's almost like the shields in Star Trek, you know, where you have all these subsystems flying around the high value asset, the manned aircraft that are protecting it, that can also be used for offensive to take out, let's say, ground threats or things like that.
Swarms.
Swarms, yeah, exactly. So you get a swarm of systems with the manned jet in the center of it, and all kinds of assets for various purposes flying alongside with it and protecting it. So that's the two big projects at Area 51. We know a few things about the B-21. We don't know hardly anything about the Next Generation Air Dominance Project other than its name and little bits and pieces of news that come out, very controlled. That's another thing. Even back in the days of the F-117, when that was developed at Area 51, it was flying for many years and nobody even knew about it. And then slowly little bits and pieces of information were leaked out and the public was kind of made aware of, yeah, we have it. And all of a sudden the Gulf War came upon and it was being used. And yeah, well, we had this for a while and now we get to use it. But until then, it was complete secrecy. The B2 project, same thing. It was done in complete secrecy, and then all of a sudden it was out in the open.
How long does your research of Area 51 go back? Like, can you count for all the projects that they've been through?
Yeah, it really would. My website, excuse me, information on my website really goes all the way back to the founding days of Area 51. The first project at Area 51 and the reason for its existence back then was the U-2 spy plane. Back at the height of the Cold War, the United States needed a way to look into Russian territory and see what they do, what assets they have, what capabilities they have. This was all before there were spy satellites. There was no other way of taking a look into Russian territory. So back in the days, the now famous division of Lockheed called the Skunk Works was tasked to develop a high-flying, super secret spy plane. And that was the U-2. Once it was developed, we needed a place to fly it out of, to test it and to fly it out of. And it needed to be very remote, away from curious eyes. And that is when Area 51 was first established in 1955. So that was the first project at Area 51. Then after the U-2 was kind of defeated, there was radar systems and there was actually jets that could reach it. And one was actually shot down over Russian territory. That was a big oops for us. So we needed something better. And now we are looking at the next generation, the A-12 spy plane, also developed by Lockheed. The A-12 flies to this day, as far as declassified data goes, it is still the fastest air-breathing aircraft ever built, manned aircraft. It flew in excess of Mach 3 at an altitude of over 90,000 feet. That was way above the range of Russian radar sites and Russian fighter jets. So it was safe, and it could also, again, spy on Russian territory. So that was a project that was going on at Area 51 in the early 60s to mid 60s. And really from then on, it gets a little bit vague. We really have no clear facts. After that, we know that the F-117 stealth, the original stealth fighter, was developed at Area 51. They were playing with a number of other systems like the Tacit Blue that I already mentioned. And, then you get into the 1990s, early 2000s, we really don't even have a clear picture of what happened and what was developed at Area 51 back then. So yeah, we are definitely at least 20 years ahead of what we call state of the art.
So is it just strictly like a not even a weapons base, but a surveillance base? Is it just strictly like flight gear, like as in planes and jets and things that we really don't get, at least the general public doesn't get to see? Because it gets tied in with like I said, the alien thing. But now that you kind of explain a lot of the projects about it, I start going, that's a great way to, like, at least before Area 51 was found out to be true, it was a great way to get people to think it was a conspiracy. But now that people know that this place does exist, the way that I would say, like, maybe they would keep people out now would be to say, like, oh, there's like nuclear radiation that's over there that they experiment with. And it would just keep wandering eyes out. I mean, there's a whole idea that you got to keep your secret secret. I mean, and if you have technology that people have never seen before, or something that they're very, very specific people have seen, and it's unexplainable that what the technology you're using is, without like a good sitting down and be like, look, we got this type of thing that works this way. I know it looks crazy. You would understand, like, do they have anything in like the shape of like a tic tac? That tic tac thing everybody keeps talking about? Do they have any, is that anything like, because I always say when there's alien phenomena, it's either, for me, it's like lightning ball or something like that. But I always say government tech. Like, we're really, really impressed about the technology that we have that the general public doesn't know. And a great way to test it is at night, or it's real quick going to a training thing that you have people that are going to come across it. And this is my speculation, obviously, if you show one of your weapon systems or one of your things during a flight exercise with your jets that you have there, you're not only testing how much better they are, you're testing a fact of what are these people going to describe what they see. And if you have a bunch of people say, I saw a UFO, we did great. That's a great aircraft, in my opinion.
Yeah, two great points that you just hit on. One thing is the just as a side note on the Tic Tacs, that is exactly what's happening with that. My opinion, at least, what's happening with those Tic Tac sightings. What I believe that is very advanced technology that we developed, quite possibly at Area 51, that was tested on unsuspecting Navy pilots. So the pilots that had these sightings, they really thought there was something out there. But in actuality, I think it was spoofing technology, technology meant to project an image where there is nothing out there, to confuse the enemy. So this goes back to the 1970s and 1980s, where our radar people, right here at Area 51, one of them is a good friend of mine, and he even told me this story, where they were projecting false radar targets to confuse the Russians and to make the Russians crank up their systems a little more and to see what the Russian systems can do. The only reason we projected these false hits was to get an idea of the capabilities of the Russian radars. And I think this whole technology has been taken to the next level to projecting not only radar returns that are false radar returns, but actually false sightings. There's all this talk about possibly plasma cannons that are able to actually project an image in the sky that you would swear there is something there, and in actuality there's nothing there. Supposedly the F-35 has a some kind of a spoofing mechanism where it can make its radar return, where it can make it appear in a different location than it really is. So the F-35 is flying right here, and it's turning up a little thing, and all of a sudden the radar return is way over here, and the enemy shoots in that direction, where in actuality the F-35 is here. So all this technology exists, and I think that is what was tested with that Tic Tac sighting and some of the other sightings that are very well documented. I believe that the pilots that saw these were honestly believing that they were chasing real aircraft or real phenomena, when in actuality it was something projected and being tested on these pilots.
I probably put that up there with number one out of the three things that I probably think it is. I also think what is it? Oh God, I'm gonna blank on the name. It just came out recently. Biden made an announcement about energy weapons. That small portion of the population was exposed to energy weapons, and they're doing a compensation program now from the number of people still experiencing side effects from it. I mean, they were getting it. It's so like affecting apparently that what they're considering long COVID, like brain fog, actually might be a effect from some of these energy weapons. And mostly it's in the military population that I've seen what the article said, but there's a small percentage of the US that was exposed to it as well, too.
Yeah, I have no evidence for that being used in the US, but there is pretty good evidence when you look at a couple of years ago, there was this case of some of our embassy people in Cuba, I think, or Russia, or some other foreign countries, all of a sudden had these weird symptoms. And I think that was some kind of an energy weapon tested on.
And also with projections as well, too. In academia, they just there's people that are using it's not holograms, but they're using these types of methods to be able to use like virtual reality style, where they can actually project things onto light particles that are just floating in the air. So it makes it look like something's standing right in front of you. You can put your hand through it, but you don't need a projection screen. They have that technology now. We do. So you got to think what the government's been working on or being able to manipulate. I just go like, because I've always said like with the lightning ball phenomena or the plasma type of thing, it's like a mirage. I mean, people see things out of something like a cloud. They'll see a face or they'll see some types of this. I go, imagine if you can find how to make that happen, but then you just turn it up and you amp people up to where they see something they can't explain and it seems like alien technology. The next thing you know, you got a bunch of people worried about aliens rather than looking at the stuff you're doing in your base.
Exactly, and I know for a fact, like I said earlier, I'm friends with some of the people that worked at Area 51 many years ago, And they are telling me that they actually did light shows for the benefit of people watching the base to confuse them, to feed into a mystery. What better way of discrediting anyone who might have actually gotten a glimpse of a secret project than throwing out all these UFO stories and making them sound like a quote unquote UFO kook?
I'd be curious though. I'd be like, is Motley Crue playing over there at Area 51?
I don't know. That's another thing. Area 51 is really. I always liken it to a mirage or to a magic mirror. You can come to Area 51 and whatever you expect to see, you can see in Area 51 because of the secrecy. Nobody really knows what's going on, and so you got the UFO people come out here and they see their UFO. You got the conspiracy people coming out here and they say that JFK is held prisoner at Area 51 or some wild conspiracy theory. Yeah, I've actually heard that one.
I've dived deep into the JFK thing, but he's not alive. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, no, we all know that. But some people, they come up with the craziest things, or they come up with that there's experiments done on aliens. And
do you think they ever branched out from that type of thing, though? Because I've read government documents and I've had Larry Hancock, who's a well known researcher about UAPs and JFK assassination as well, too. And he's looked over through 20,000 documents when it comes to the UAP articles. And they do account for like aliens in their documents. They do account for recovering a body, but also there's a lot of that too that is propaganda that can be included in their own documents, inserting falsified documents he mentions, only because you got to think of if a spy breaks in, what are they going to read and what are they going to come across? I just bring up the question to you through your research or through your study and observations of Area 51. Do you think that they ever branched out of the category of just weapons or machines that are better for flight? Do you think they ever went into this aspect of like, I think why people would think JFK would be there? It's not the aspect of like, well, they are kind of nuts, but I think it lands in the area of like, there's cloning technology that they talk about. And I know some people that talk about it so casually who work in academia about cloning sheep and cloning fruit and cloning all these types of things, where I go, this is where I remember Area 51 was being stormed or people were talking about storming it. I wasn't interested in alien tech, but I was interested in what the hell they might be experimenting on. I don't trust anything when it comes to biological or chemical warfare. And I think that, I mean, you got a test facility out in the middle of the desert somewhere. I think that's a great place to start experimenting.
it is. It is a very secret facility, and you could pretty much do any project that needs secrecy at Area 51. It seems that everything, the infrastructure at Area 51 is very much geared towards aviation. I mean, they got these long runways, they got a bunch of hangars. So the main focus at Area 51 is definitely on aviation, but there could be other projects going on. We know pretty much for a fact that there's a lot of research on radar systems going on, possibly on energy weapons. Who knows what else? I mean, again, you could believe that there is some kind of a bio weapons being developed there. We can't prove or disprove it. We have just no data on that. The data that we have is very much on aviation. That's the history of the base. That's where it comes from. It is managed by the United States Air Force. So for the most part, the majority of things are definitely aviation related. A big thing at Area 51, and that is where the reverse engineering sort of comes into play, is the research into foreign technology. And when I say foreign technology, I'm not talking about flying saucers, I'm talking about Russian planes and Russian radar sites. So every once in a while, we get our hands on Russian systems through somebody who defects from a Russian-controlled country or in other ways. And these systems usually end up at Area 51. So they have a whole collection of Russian planes and a whole collection of Russian radar sites that we are literally testing against our own stuff to make sure that we are one step ahead of them. We know their weaknesses, we know their strengths. There used to be a whole squadron in Area 51, and quite possibly still is, that flies Russian MiGs for a living. So you got these pilots, supposedly they are really of Russian mindset almost. They are supposed to almost think like Russians, flying Russian MiGs against our fighter jets to find out how well do these Russian MiGs do, how can we beat them, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses. And on the same subject, we also have these Russian radar sites. Some of them I can see from my house here in Rachel. I'm looking right at them. They are sitting at the back gate of Area 51, about 10 miles from here. And at night, I can often see the lights of the radar sites come on when they're active. What they do is they fly our new developments against Russian radar sites to see, can we beat them? Can those sites pick us up? And of course, the idea is to make our aircraft as good enough so they can pick us up. So that's a big, big thing at Area 51.
Do you think that's possible that they could be getting, like, when we have satellites, or for instance, like we have satellites that get hit, or they get, like, space has been weaponized. I think you have to come to the agreement with that. Space is weaponized. Any country going up there is trying to find a way to get data or information off of a satellite. I start wondering, it's like, where is that technology being built? Do you think there's a capacity to test things that don't just, like, I bet with aviation, they have planes that probably go really close to space in a sense, not necessarily in out of our atmosphere, but really high up. They can handle high altitudes and stuff. Where I start wondering, I wonder if they're ever making like probes and things to be able to send up there. And maybe that's what a lot of people are getting confused when they see weird balls of light in the sky at night.
Absolutely. That's one of the big things. There's so many phenomena that you see out here at night that we that live in the area pretty much know that they are natural, that they are military hardware. But to the casual observer who comes here for a day or two, they might think it's a UFO. Some of these things, people come out here and they may actually at night see something super secret flying. They might see one of these weapons or one of these systems being tested, but you have no idea what it is. All you see is really a few lights in the sky, and it looks kind of spooky, but it's very much earthly technology under development at Area 51 that just to the casual observer doesn't make sense. I've seen in my early days here, I fell victim to misidentification a number of times. The first time I saw flares that are basically very hot, like fireworks almost, that are deployed by an aircraft to divert heat-seeking missiles. The plane, when it's being chased and deploys flares, it typically flies an evasive maneuver. It flies a curve. These flares are being deployed in a curve, in a semicircle almost. The first time I saw this in the night sky up above me, I could swear there was a UFO with lights around its perimeter, until I realized, no, it's flares, it's military exercises that are taking place.
Well, how do you observe that? Do you look at that as like a positive that that you think that when you see that type of technology, or do you think that it's like a negative? Like, I like that we're working on advanced stuff to be better than the competition, because I mean, it's just human need to feel like, our human need, I guess, to want to excel and create better technology than your opponent. It's a weird spot that we look at other countries as opponents, but that's kind of how the world works. But also, I just think that, like, you would have a lot more clarity on so much stuff, and maybe you would lose interest of the public if people actually knew what the hell that they were working on.
That's a good point. I think if we ever had an open house at Area 51 where people could just walk in there and take a look around,
take a ticket,
people would just lose interest because the mystery goes away. But as far as the weapon system is concerned, yes, unfortunately, the world is in such a situation right now that we are going from one Cold War right into the next Cold War. I grew up at the height of the first Cold War, and I can see all the signs we are going right back there. And unfortunately, in a situation like that, we have to be prepared to be just one step better than people that want us harm. And unfortunately, that's why we need these developments that keep us one step ahead. And we can't obviously let these developments fall in the hands of our enemies. So we got to keep them secret. I see that as I wish we didn't need it. It would be nice to live in the world where these systems, where this thinking wasn't needed, but unfortunately, right now it is needed. So I definitely see it as a positive to have an Area 51 and other areas like that. There's whole test ranges way up north in Alaska, and there's other test ranges like Area 51 where we can test stuff in total secrecy and have it when we need it. I hope we never will, but if we do need it, um, some of the audience that are a little older maybe remember when the first Gulf War broke out. There were signs, but nobody really saw it coming, and all of a sudden it was there. We went to war, and we could pull out this F-117 stealth fighter, this brand new system at the time that nobody knew about, that gave us a huge advantage. So that's what Area 51 is all about, developing technology that keeps us safe in a conflict that hopefully will never happen. But if it does, we need to be prepared.
Do you think that when you mentioned AI before, have you ever seen this movie? It's like a flight movie, but one of the systems that they made was a stealth bomber looking version, but it wasn't a drone. It was an artificial intelligence, but it was an airplane, and it could fly very fast. It had elite weapon systems, and it was supposed to reduce the risk, I guess, of human error or human death. In a scenario where they got into a battle and it got lost, you would just lose the machine, you would lose the AI. Do you think they have systems like that at Area 51?
I'm pretty sure they do. AI is the big buzzword right now. So I'm sure they are working on it.
If Google's got it, Area 51's got to have it.
Well, exactly. I mean, who else would have it? And you know, it's already. I think it's already old news at Area 51. I think they've worked on that before AI was even a buzzword in the public. So they, you know, I would not be surprised to learn that there's already aircraft fully flying with AI control at Area 51. And on the subject of Area 50, I'm sorry, on the subject of AI, I'm a little torn between, yes, it can be a good thing, but I can also see, I'm a software developer by trade. That's what I used to do for a living. So I know there's always glitches in software. And I just hope that these people get the AI good enough to where it doesn't eventually turn against us, kind of Terminator style.
I spoke with Roman Yampolsky, I think his name is. He studies like the bad stuff with AI, like what's going to happen, existential risk type factors. And he's very, very pessimistic about the future just because he's seen all the dimensions of AI. And the issue with AI is the people that put in the code. You know, like it's very, very hard not to have a bias in some sense. And even if you're getting multiple biases into one machine, is that machine still going to make the proper choice? I mean, it's hard. And the main thing is when a judgment gets made, is are you going to trust that the machine knows more if it doesn't fit your opinion? And he also brought up the point, which is if it comes up with the cure for cancer, imagine if the AI just thinks that the cure for cancer is to eliminate humans. You know, like that's it's to me, it's a sci-fi scenario, but it's a real thing. Like this thing isn't trying to cut corners, it's trying to find the elite option with what you program it with. And sadly, it's the materials we put in. And there's an idea of an AI unity, which is this like there's a interesting show on Netflix with Mike Myers called, I think it's the Pentaveret or something like that. It's about the conspiracy type stuff. At the ending of it, this all-seeing AI thing that speaks all, like knows all the words and knows everything, kind of controls the system like a world order type deal. It reaches like this new phase where it only suggests things rather than tells you what to do. And it's actually a government project called AI Unity. And it's this thing that never doesn't really necessarily make like decisions like this is the answer, but it just suggests things. It shows possible outcomes. It's more of like a that friend in the back seat that says, hey, you could take a left here, it would be faster. You don't have to listen, you can just go. But the way we've gone with AI, which where I get my pessimism from, is we're heading into implementing it into stuff without knowing the full capabilities of what it can do. And it's dangerous. Hacking is an issue, and a lot of these factors are issues, but it does solve some problems that we do have issues with.
It does solve some problems, but it creates a whole mess of new problems. And maybe it's my generation. I really don't trust computers to not eventually come up with solutions that we can't even foresee. Like you were saying, what if the computers decide that we are the source of pollution in this world? So eliminate us, and life is good for the rest of the world. We just don't know, and not even to mention hacking. There was actually cases of drones being hacked by foreign countries and by means that may sound so trivial and so simple. For instance, there were cases where there was just a quick aside, where foreign operatives just dumped a bunch of jump drives in parking lots of military bases, and people picked them up, they plugged them into their computer, and there was a virus on the jump drive, and boom, the military guy picks up that jump drive, wants to know what's on it, plugs it in his computer, and boom, he's got a virus on his computer, and so the virus spreads onto military hardware.
It's the fucking like when you find a key in a parking lot and you're like, I want to find what this key goes to, and you start inserting it in a bunch of freaking holes trying to make the key fit.
Of course, all those loopholes have been plugged by now, but in the beginning, that was a case where that actually happened. And so, it's you got to be one step ahead of whatever possible hacking the enemy can come up with, and we're almost like we're coming out of an arms race, and now we're getting into an AI race or a software race to outdo our opponents on that level. Hacking is a big thing.
Well, I'd rather the government track my phone rather than a random person who has the technology to do so. I mean, it's a common thing, data protection and data security. I mean, a lot of these stuffs are robot calls and scams, but AI, I think when we talk about war purposes, I think these jets they're interesting, but also I start wondering, what are we doing with the type of electric weapons we have now? Not even just energy weapons, but hypersonic missiles. I mean, these are stuff that the public's now seeing that we have, and I just go, what are they also doing that's 10 years more advanced? Like, they got others. This is just the base stuff. They're like, oh, this stuff. Here's the thing, there's one person there that has to be releasing this to the public. Like, when can we release this? October, like how movie trailers come out. And one person slaps somebody in the back of the head and goes, man, you're supposed to release that last year. They're way behind. Now we're going to be doubling up on some stuff, like, because you have to slowly, you got so much equipment in your warehouse. Next thing you know, you're like, all right, what can we release to everybody so they can get warmer to the ideas of the things we're working on now that are going to be released in like 20 years.
And I think that's actually where groups like ours come into play, that kind of dig into the secrets of Area 51 and maybe every once in a while catch a glimpse. And part of me thinks that maybe what we are lucky enough to pick up is actually controlled, and that's exactly what you said. It's getting the public familiar with these new things that are happening at Area 51. But every once in a while, maybe giving us a little bit of information that then spreads on social media and on websites and all that good stuff. I think that is one way for them to actually get the word out about new projects. But a lot of what we do, what I do here, Rachel, and a lot of the people that have kind of formed around my website, we run scanners, radio scanners, listening to my website.
Show your shirt on your website and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if people can read it. My website is called dreamlandresort.com. Dreamland is the radio call sign of aircraft entering Area 51 airspace. So I thought it was a kind of a catchy name, dreamlandresort.com, for anyone interested in Area 51.
Sounds like a drug trip. Sounds like a bad drug trip.
Anyone, any questions? There's a feedback link on my website, of course. Email me, let me know, and I'll try to answer any questions as the best I can. So what our group is doing is we are monitoring Area 51. We are listening on scanners. We are watching the airspace. But the big thing is listening to radio communications. And surprisingly, a lot of the radio communication at Area 51 is actually in the clear. Lately I've been using a lot of what is called software-defined radios. It's basically little USB sticks that attach to the USB port and attach to an antenna on the other end. And they do their little magic. And then you have a program that runs a spectrum analyzer, a scanner, whatever you want, on the frequencies that you pick up. That's a great way of listening in on the goings on at the base. We can monitor test flights. I'm regularly monitoring test flights mostly at night, recording them, listening to them in the morning, find out what's going on, post the information on my website. And one project in the very near future that I'm working on right now is actually possibly streaming live scanner audio from Area 51, or have a kind of a daily upload of the recordings of last night of test flights and stuff at Area 51. That's really cool stuff, what's going on there. You can listen to it to some degree and get kind of an idea of what they are doing. Of course, they don't say, okay, I'm going to fly this super secret SR-75 right now, and I'm going up to 50,000 feet, I'm going up to 100,000 feet. They use codes for all this. They say, okay, test card 1, test card 2, test card 3, and of course the pilot has these test cards and know what that means, what maneuver to fly at the moment. But it's kind of interesting to listen to all that. And we do, from just putting little bits and pieces together, oftentimes we get the type of aircraft, we get the tail number of the aircraft, and with that information we can actually determine what they are doing. There's some aircraft that are known to be radar test beds. So if one of these radar test beds is up in the air at night, we know that they are doing some kind of a mission that involves radar sites and possibly stealth testing. So that's one of the really big things, and one of the tools that we have to get a glimpse of what's going on in Area 51. And a couple of years ago, I was actually I was lucky enough to listen to what I believe to be an early test of one of the major subsystems of the new B-21 bomber that was tested here. There was a bunch of players in the air that night, and the scanner just lit up with information, and putting all these little pieces together that I heard, I believe that was an early test of one of the either stealth systems or one of the electronic systems to do with radio navigation or with possibly counter stealth measures.
This might sound crazy, but is there anything they have where they're testing things to be able to manipulate weather? I know that gets linked as a conspiracy, but I've talked to people at the HARP Institute that works on weather and all that type of stuff. They do openly talk about the technology to be able to use weather modification. So I'm just curious if there's been any ideas of, especially if you're in the desert. I mean, if you can change the climate a little bit there, or do something that can fluctuate something, I don't know if that would be linked in with the conspiracy or anything.
Do I believe that we have that technology? Absolutely, no doubt. They're talking about it openly, and it's there, it exists. I don't really think it is something that they play with at Area 51 per se. There are certainly agencies that are probably still working on that technology and perfecting it. But honestly, I don't think it is anything that is being done at Area 51. I mean, out here we got perfect weather almost year round. It's kind of hot in the summer. It's a little cooler in the winter, but it's not like, I mean, if you were to test something that generates, I don't know, weeks of cloud cover, that would really not fit in here. People would notice, and you know, you can't really, you're kind of limited as what you can do in the desert. So I'm, you know,
Well, when it comes to other bases, do you ever speculate if there's an Area 51? Is there any other ones out there as well too?
yeah, absolutely. One of them, you don't have to go very far. It's actually unofficially known as Area 52. That is the Tonopah Test Range. It's about 80 miles from Area 51, near the town of Tonopah. That is after the stealth fighters were developed at Area 51, when they were in a flyable condition, they were then transferred to Tonopah Test Range, and test flights were continued there. So that's another secret facility that has actually very recently been modified, expanded, modernized. We don't know exactly for what purpose, but again, a very secret base that for whatever purpose, all of a sudden a lot of money was there and a lot of money was spent to improve that base. It is certainly
It's like a midnight craving. Sometimes you get a craving for ice cream randomly and then you never touch it again, but it sits in your freezer for 5 years.
Well, we certainly keep an eye on it, and we hope that eventually we'll find out what all this money that was spent there was spent on, what project is moving in there. And of course, beyond that, there's all kinds of, there's the Utah Test and Training Range. There's supposedly some secret stuff happening up there. I already mentioned that there's bases up in Alaska, completely away from anyone, where they can fly stuff that we would never know about because we can't even pick up the radio transmissions from here.
Some people bring up the idea that Area 51 was so secret that even the president didn't know about it. But after talking to you, I think they just go, there's no need for him to go there at all. Like, why would you? I don't, if I was the president, the last place I would want to go is go see aviation systems. I know for some people that's like their thing, but I'm not a planes, trains, automobile type guy. I am a, where's the chemical weapons? Where's the clone sheep? I'm that type of guy.
Well, on the subject of presidents, I know for a fact that at least one president has been in Area 51.
JFK.
So it does happen. Not JFK. It does happen. They have to. Area 51 is need to know, and if the president has a need to know or can make a case, a good enough case for a need to know, then he gets to go there under tight security, and I'm sure he doesn't get to see everything. He gets to see the things that they want him to see, and he doesn't get to see the things that he doesn't have a need to see. So do I believe that they have secrets even from the president of the United States? Absolutely, I do. But to, of course, a much wider degree than the American public, the president is in the know on what's going on there.
Why do you think so many people were so easily dismissed of Bob Lazar and his story?
The Bob Lazar story is very convincing when you first hear it. What always strikes me about it is how consistent Lazar is about his story. He never changes his story. You know, mostly when people come up with a nice story, it eventually morphs into something. It changes. They don't remember what they said. And Lazar never did that. He sticks with his story. And there are actually situations where he just says that wasn't my area of expertise. I wasn't privy to that information. So he doesn't always make up stuff, but sometimes he just says, okay, I don't know. And that's exactly what somebody who actually worked on the project would do. But then when you look a little closer into his story, he makes a lot of claims about his education credentials that can be 100% disproven. He claims to have degrees that don't exist. For instance, he claims to have a degree in electronics. An electronics degree doesn't exist. I happen to have a degree in electrical engineering. That is what it's called. And if I work very hard for that degree, I remember what it's called, and I don't call it a degree in electronics. So that is a big red flag right there, that he doesn't even know what that degree is called that he claims to have. There's claims that he worked on classified projects. There's actually, let me back up. There's claims where he claims to have received an education at the same time when it is proven that he worked full time in a different state. So how can he work full time in a different state while he claims to have to obtain a degree at a university in a whole different state? That doesn't jive. There's just a lot of things that, not even to mention that element 115 or 117 or whatever the heck it's called, that he claims to have discovered, that subsequently after he came out with his story has been discovered and has been shown to have completely different properties of what he says it has. So there's a lot of, when you really look behind the scenes of his story, there's just a lot of things that don't jive. And for people that really want to get into this, there is a great article on my website. It's actually a series of articles that were written many, many years ago by a fellow Area 51 researcher by the name of Tom Mahood. He spent a lot of time looking into Lazar and his story and wrote a great article really disproving a lot of Lazar's claims. It's on my website, dreamlandresort.com. Look for the Lazar Corner, and you'll find pages and pages of information about what all doesn't jive with Lazar's story.
Well, damn it, it was my first interest into the UAP subject, or just advanced material subject in general. So I can't just toss it out yet. I still got to hold a long, even as much people poke holes in it. I got to be like, look, let's go on to something else. That's a better job. That's always what I say. I'm not like one of those guys that will stand up and be like, oh, he's 100% right. I'm not that at all. But it was my first interest into that, was that subject in general. And then I dived a little bit deeper, and I've had great conversations about it. I mean, I still think government tech's way more advanced, and it's possibly what people are conflating with UAP stuff, but I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, just because Lazar's story has been disproven doesn't mean that all stories and all sightings of UAPs are bogus. It just means that this particular story of Lazar is not the case. But there is actually, I'm a skeptic, and the more I look into Area 51, and the more I see tourists coming out here, that they come out here for a day trip. They camp out by what is known as the Black Mailbox. That's a very popular night sky watching area here near Rachel. They camp out there for a night, and they see a light in the sky, and for them it's a UFO, and they go home happy. Great. I mean, no problem with that. I mean, that's what they came here to see, and that's what they see. They had the experience. But the more I see these things happening, and I know for myself that what they saw was, I know that there was a plane out there. You can even see the blinking strobe lights on the plane. And, the more I see these things, heartfelt UFO sightings that for myself I can explain, the more I become a skeptic in that whole phenomenon. I can't rule out that there are cases that I can't explain. Some cases are borderline, like the Tic Tac thing that is like, I'm still on the fence on that one. Like I said, I think it's spoofing, but it could be something other than that.
I'm with you on the spoofing thing. I don't really trust that either. I saw a picture of it. They had a statue of it. Louis Zondo was standing in front of it. And I just go, yeah, man, like that's too similar to what everybody sees. I'm like, to think that they haven't been, it's not hard to shape an aircraft in that sense. I mean, like I said, there's stuff we don't know. I don't know how advanced they are. I just wish they would tell me. Like, I know they have a watch where if you wear this watch, you can tap it twice and by your car, and your headlights of your car will pop off and fly. You basically light up your way to your door. if it's nighttime or something like that. That's a simple consumer product. Now take the advanced one when Mike Baker, who worked in the CIA for so long, talks about on Joe Rogan that they have these little tiny microbe little drone things that can come out of a watch at 100 a swarm basically and fly around you, and they're like weapons. And it's like, what are we talking about? Like, I have never seen that before. I've never heard of it. It sounds sci-fi, but honestly, at this point, I don't. You could just turn on Star Trek and be like, "That's what we're making next."
Mhm. Well, that's really we are so far behind the curve in terms of what is being developed at Area 51 that a lot of the things that they are playing with probably would seem, if we were to see them, in full daylight, it would seem alien or would seem like magic to us.
If they make lightsabers, they better release that shit soon, because I can't be 50 years old and discover, oh my God, we're finally getting the technology that they had for so long.
Oh, I wouldn't even be surprised if they already have. I just wouldn't. But if and when they have a technology, it was developed by us. I just don't believe in the fact that we are, trading secrets with some alien races or whatever. It's our technology, and don't give us a little more credit. I mean, we have really bright people working at Area 51, and they come up with stuff that we can't even think about.
I um I like your take because I've seen your website, I've looked through it, and it's very highly detailed with a lot of stuff on their black sites, radio scanners, Area 51. You have a long list, and that's why I was so interested in talking to you about this. And I know it's probably talking about Area 51. Once you explain it to people, I think the hype kind of not, I wouldn't say the hype dies down. It's definitely fascinating stuff, but I think a lot of people like think it's going to be like some type of conspiratorial talk. You know what I mean? Like that's the because that's how it's been pitched for so long. And I mean, there's still people out there that go, wait, Area 51 exists? It's like, yeah, it's a base. Yes, it exists. It just makes it more interesting because I like the secret stuff. I like the stuff that we really don't know about, but also I want to know. I want to know what they got, whether you think it's cool or not. If you got a plane that's being projected into the sky that doesn't actually exist, I would like to see that.
Exactly. That's one thing that I would like. Uh, I don't want to come across as telling people, "Hey, Area 51 isn't worth a visit." It is totally worth a visit. There's some really cool stuff going on there. I just don't think it has anything to do with aliens. But that, in my book, makes it even cooler that we actually come up with this super secret, super cool stuff that gives us an edge in possible conflicts. We come up with this great stuff, and Area 51 is a driving force. Of course, what the military develops today, tomorrow the private sector is going to have. So there's stuff developed at Area 51 that will eventually make its way into consumer electronics, into the private sector. So it is super cool for us to watch Area 51, to monitor it, to put together little bits and pieces of information, and that's where my website really comes in. That it kind of forms a focus point for people that want to share this information. We have this discussion forum on my website where people can post all kinds of ideas, all kinds of thoughts about Area 51, and it's being discussed, and so we can talk about it, and people have a place. They are not alone with their speculations, with their ideas, with their thoughts of what's going on at Area 51, but they can discuss it with others that may or may not be like-minded, that may have other ideas. But that's the great thing about Area 51, that you can you learn a lot about it. In my 23 years of doing this now, I've learned a lot about Area 51, but there is still so much to learn and so much to discover. And almost every day I'm discovering a little bit of information that I didn't know before. So, I can only encourage people, hey, if you're interested in Area 51, come out here, camp out here for a couple of nights, and come to my website. There's also a big section for trip planning, by the way, on my website, where people can get information and, of course, advice in the forum for planning their trips out here. So my website also wants to be a resource for the first-time visitors.
Well,
And
why don't you say your website off one more time and we can wrap up the show? You gave me enough of your time.
My website is called dreamlandresort.com. And I can invite everybody to visit us, look us up, shoot me an email through the feedback link. I'll try to get back to you as best as I can. I'll post in the forum, introduce yourself, say what your interests are, and jump right into the discussions. And one last thing, I also run the website of this little town of Rachel, Nevada. The website is called Rachel-Nevada, rachel-nevada.com. There's also a lot of information about this area, camping spots on that website. So anyone interested in this area, look us up, dreamlandresort.com and rachel-nevada.com.
Well, I make sure I link it all in the description. It's been a pleasure chatting, and thanks for listening to this episode of Out of the Blank Podcast.